Hey, everyone.
Hey.
So we are at time, so let us begin. See, so we've got a few, I'll just copy them up, but just to be aware, there's a lot of time off coming up in the next month, actually. So be aware of that. Like, we will be planning to prioritize less work in the next month to accommodate for the fewer people. So please don't feel like we need to be maintaining kind of the same throughput we normally do, like particularly if things are lower priority and they can wait till May when we have more people available for reviews, then please consider doing that. And Skarbek, you have the first discussion item.
Thank you, Amy. Good morning, everyone. I was partially not bored on Friday, and I had a lot of random thoughts buzzing around my head in terms of various items related to release management to potentially make small things easier. These are all tiny tasks. They're not really big. So anything that was created, it was not an April Fool's joke. I decided to create what I thought were legitimate ideas. And also one item was QA related. So if anyone has time, feel free to go through the issues that I created during that day and see if you have ideas as to what we should do with them and if they're worth the effort or not.
Do you feel, so I know like we've said for the last few months, there's been quite a lot of hands-on stuff for release management. Now we're getting close to starting to pick goals for Q2. How do people feel about where we are? Like, would it be worth us actually trying to analyze release management pain points and gather all these things up to make a plan to reduce that as a top priority? Like, I mean, that would mean we don't prioritize other things. But I mean, where do you all feel like you are in terms of the, release management is taking too much time versus how it used to feel?
I don't have a direct answer to your question. I instead have a differing opinion. I think we should always be trying to improve our tooling, even if it's outside of the scope of project work. And I think some of the ideas that I've had, they're little minuscule things that might be able to just provide a little quality of life improvements of our tooling.
Agreed.
That being said, I do feel like release management has become not necessarily more difficult, but there's just more things happening compared to the last time I was on rotation. So I just feel a little more worked up than I would normally have been previously. Like last week, I probably worked solid 12-hour days the entire week, which is not normal. But like even like these little ideas, they wouldn't solve that particular issue.
But this is what I'm exactly getting at, right? Like, I'm not sure we can iterate out of that. And that's kind of the question is, should we actually, or maybe let me reframe that because we don't want to maintain that, right? Like, is there a good reason not to spend a bunch of time in the next week or two and really try and like find a few bigger impact things that actually bring down release management toil? No? Okay, I'm gonna get ahead. Let's see if we can get some stuff, because I know we've did some great stuff in the past on the Kubernetes migration where we actually were like, here is 20 billion things we're thinking of, and let's review them and actually pick the most impactful ones. I think we need to do something similar for release management. So let's have a think about how we can put that together and actually see if that throws up some stuff that's like beyond just like you could save a minute here or a little bit there, but actually it's a real game change sort of shift for us.
I thought I could save 20 seconds on one of these, but you shot me down quickly.
I'm not sure it's that much. Like 20 seconds, like let's get to the point where 20 seconds is going to be a significant changer, right? Like, I know we've got a lot of stuff that it's easy to just say, we've been doing pipeline changes, or we've had kind of unexpected things happen, and those things will just resolve themselves for sure. However, we also now are deploying so much more frequently. We've kind of created some problems for ourselves. We're deploying so much more frequently, and our pipelines are super fast, which gives us some other problems, right? It means we collide with more changes, and it means you have more stuff in flight. So let's not neglect that. I think, like, let's see if we can actually review and pick some things that might ease up, or we change the way we do it, right? Like, we're very much running with the model that's probably been the release management model for forever, right? Like, so perhaps we actually review the workload, the expectations of release management.
I wonder if we can't find something that cut off our workloads, because we are very close to this process. When I ended my release manager shift, I wasn't very clear about how to improve it, because I was so close to it that, well, I didn't have any fresh ideas. So I have been trying to think outside the box about what could be a good idea to try to transform it into a nicer process. I don't have a solid idea yet. I'm just trying to think what could we remove, or what could we add to make it completely different and make it easier.
Yeah, I think that's what we need to do. Let me think about some structure, but I'm going to, I think it might be useful for us to do some sort of analysis and quantify some stuff, but also have a few smaller groups, discussion groups, because yeah, I agree with you, Myra. Like, I don't think there's an obvious, if we just did this issue or this project, things would get better, which will make it a little harder, I think, to async. But I'm hopeful that if we have some discussions, we might start to actually think, like, figure out, I think we're going to need to do something a bit differently, to be honest. I don't know what that is, but that's kind of where I'm thinking. So in terms of picking up these issues, Skabek, so these are all on kind of planning. Is there one that, or two, that you want to nominate as, like, if we could solve this problem, that would be great, and then we can kind of focus on figuring out a solution for that?
Well, the one that kind of grinds my gears the most is the quality related one.
When
But
QA
that's
is
going to be
failing?
more specifically for backports.
Oh, yes.
So I think that one would probably be the most impactful, but that's only because I've been working very closely with backports recently. And I'm probably the nicest person when it comes to backports compared to anyone else on the team. So I'm self-inflicting that wound. Outside of that, I think it might be worth looking into the auto deploy, picking up older versions of GitLab, because
Yes.
Ruben has come across this a few times. I have not, which is weird, but I feel like I think at least 2 times last week, I woke up in the morning and Ruben's commenting that I'm ignoring this package because auto deploy picked up an older version of GitLab somehow. So I think looking through that would probably be the most beneficial immediately. Just to make sure that we're not doing anything wrong or anything.
Yeah, okay, great. That's a great idea. Let's figure out what's going on.
I think the next higher priority item would be what to do when QA begins to fail. Only because depending on the test case scenario, some QA jobs get some specific QA tests get retried, and there's an exponential back off. So if QA is starting to fail, and we're hitting that exponential back off, we're not going to get notified for 3+ hours that a environment failed its deploy. So I think that would be the next good one to look into.
Cool. Okay, that sounds good. I'll move those onto the board so that if someone has some time, we can investigate. Great. So question, Great. Okay, I think we've got the answer for this. Great. So one thing we're discussing in reliability or with reliability is whether a PCR needs to be in place over the Easter dates. A lot of public holidays around 15th and 18th. We didn't have one last year. And actually, I'd like to avoid one this year if we can, because that is going to be very painful on the monthly release if we PCL over 15th and 18th. So, great. Between the three of you, are you happy for us to put together some sort of release management coverage so that we don't have to do full-scale deploys, but we can do some deploys and also run through any release monthly release tasks? Perfect. Great. Thanks very much. Myra, over to you.
Yep, thank you. On the same vein of making release manager activities easier, I noticed this incident was open last week, and it was an S1 incident that wasn't related to the GitLab functionality. It was related to payments and transactions that are outside of GitLab. Now, for context, this incident was was active for 3 days, and it was an S1. An S1 being open for 3 days and active for 3 days in my head is kind of, I don't know, it sounds weird because it is an S1 and it shouldn't be open for 3 days, but that's probably another point. This incident being active meant that delivery activities were automatically blocked, like auto deploys, also feature flags were blocked. And when it comes to auto deploys, release managers had to deploy through charops, which is kind of painful. And of course, it wasn't the only thing that happened last week. We also had the security thing and I'm sure another incidents, right? So that last week was kind of messy. So I wonder what should be our response when we have these incidents that are blocking us without necessarily being S1s, because I don't think this was actually perhaps an S1 that should have been open for that much time.
I just linked a proposal where I'm trying to request that we get some labels added that we could add to release tools to help us. If we identify something as not harming us and we could deploy, I don't think there's a need for us to always request the EOC permission. I think as long as we meet our compliance goals, and I think if we have a label that we could apply, and the reason that label was applied on the originating issue is well documented, I think this should be doable. So I've opened a proposal. I've got Steve Lloyd tagged into it, but I think it's just a matter of priority and timing as to whether or not this is both doable and when we could pull it, I guess.
Just literally added a comment on there, just go back, which I actually meant to add last week and forgot to press enter. So I've added a comment there. And on the one you mentioned in that issue around the change request, I think that was a change request being slightly misused, but I'm not sure. The wording in the handbook's a little vague, but I think we could tighten that up. On the incidents itself, yes, it would be great. I need to do some work and put some stuff together, and then we can make a proposal to compliance. In the meantime, I'm not sure how quickly that will happen. It depends a little bit on how this week plays out, but I'll try and do it as soon as I can. In the meantime, Ruben has started work on trying to reduce the pain a little bit. So right now we're seeing that overriding is much harder than it used to be. Well, twice as hard as it used to be, because you have to override on staging as well as on production. And Ruben has already picked up the, yes.
Yeah, I pasted the issue.
Also, thanks. So Ruben started working there. So at least we hopefully get that back to the slightly lower. The thing we need to be a little bit careful of around the labels is our process at the moment allows the EOC to bear kind of ultimate responsibility for all changes going to production. And we just need to be a bit careful that once the label, if we introduced a label, anybody could add that and would add that. At the moment, from chatting with Java, at the moment, I don't think reliability want to have a process where they police that. but I'm not sure what compliance will think about that. So those are the bits we just need to pull together before we go ahead with a change like this. But I think to your original point, Myra, like completely reasonable for release managers to question severities. So actually this one changed because Rehab questioned it and said, hey, you know, we're dealing with this like it's an S1. However, it's been open for 3 days and it causes a heap of extra work. Like, is that correct? And Steve decided to kind of work around that. So, you know, release managers, I would encourage you to be more demanding, I guess, like I'm seeing on the incidents as well. Like, I don't think we're necessarily calling people out as much as we can, that like, hey, this change that we did had led us to this pain. And I don't think an individual would necessarily realize that unless we point it out to them. So feel free to, happy to help wording if you need help, but like, you know, do feel free to challenge people on severities and things like that.
I wanted to just add a reminder that we added the backstage label for non-customer facing incidents, right? So this would be the reverse. We are looking for something which is affecting customers, but shouldn't block deployments or feature flags, right?
That's it.
So, yeah.
That's it. Awesome. Thanks for raising that up, Myra. So release managers, we've talked quite a few things, but like, is there anything specific you wanted to call out on MTTP for last week?
I don't have anything to call out now.
Awesome.
We
Okay,
got
great.
delayed more often, but I think we still got deploys out the door in reasonable time frames. We deployed less often, but
interesting.
more
I think we
incidents,
must have some gaps because from tracking on incidents, the blockers were super low. And I know we had some
I'm
other
also
delays
forgetting to
around like
add that
broken
label.
masters and stuff. Right. So that's the stuff which I think is going to make it harder. Like, I know this is a bad process. I wonder if we should also, before we go into Q2, change this process. Because I think unless we have, without data, it's really hard to say to people like, hey, we need you to invest in changing this thing because you're causing us pain, because the pain is quite invisible.
Perhaps we should automate that process of adding labels. I know we have talked about this for a while, but we can't try to think of a boring solution to add just that label so we don't forget. For example, we could just add the closest label based on the time the incident was active with a webhook or something, and just have it there.
Yeah, let's have a, how about we get an issue? Skabek, would you and Ruben, do you think be okay to like drop a list in an issue of like all the things you can think of that held you up, and then we can figure out like doesn't have to be specifics, but like, you know, master was broken, or we were dealing with something else, or there was an incident, and we can just start to look at where are the gaps, because I don't think we have everything even included in that labeling process as well.
Yeah, we'll do.
Great stuff. All right, thanks, Tom. Awesome. Okay, I am going to stop this recording because I know we have social stuff to get through. So